All right, our last speaker is Lisa Cuddeback, and her title is Storytelling and Public Engagement Manager with the Hill Country Alliance. It says, everybody can read as well as I can, but it says you're passionate about your natural resource in the Hill Country. And so if you'd come up and share that with everyone, be great.
Thanks. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and set a little stopwatch so I keep an eye on time. But thanks, y'all. Thanks for being here. My name is Leah Cuddeback. I'm here with the Hill Country Alliance. And before I kick off my talk, I'd like to know a little bit about who all's in the room today. I focus in the Hill Country, but I'm curious to know where everybody else here is coming from. So you can shout out. Panhandle? The Rio Grande Valley? No, wait, what'd you say? Permian Basin. Okay, Permian Basin. Anybody from Rio Grande Valley? Laredo? Awesome. Okay, so we've got folks from outside the Hill Country. Houston area, that's a really big population center. I'm sure there's more than one Houston area person here. I'm here for the Hill Country Alliance, and our work largely focuses on the Hill Country region. I'm going to make sure I'm sliding through this correctly. But I think the takeaways that we see here in Central Texas can apply to a far wider variety of folks across the state. So hopefully you get something from my talk. I'm going to try to give you a quick overview here. I've got kind of 5 pieces to this presentation. We're going to start with some background on me and on our work at the Hill Country Alliance. I'm going to go into why we call our outreach storytelling, and hopefully give you some ideas on how you can tell more interesting stories in your own organizations, and how by telling more interesting stories, you can create better storytellers for your own work. Okay, so background on me. My background is in wildlife biology. I came to Texas originally to get a degree at Texas State in wildlife sciences, which is a little different than what I do today, managing a website and doing outreach and communication. But what I've seen in my time in this role is that hard science and that soft science of storytelling, of communication, of how we translate those really complex topics like hydrogeological information into something digestible to the general public is really what's going to bring us to a future where people are water informed and making choices that are good for the state as a whole. My background is also in informal science education. So for over 10 years, I actually worked as a summer camp counselor, as an educator, working with children, adults, and young adults in a variety of different, education and outreach roles. So part of who I am is that I'm a former camp counselor, and I love a good story. If y'all know me outside of this, you probably know that I'll tell you something about camps or how to, different wildlife fun facts. That's like another thing. But I think what we all do in all of our roles is bring together our past experience. And for me, being extroverted and a talker has really led me to connect with folks. And that is kind of my job today. So I'm not here to tell you about hydrogeological models or how the karst system in the Hill Country differentiates itself from karst systems in other parts of the country or Texas. I'm here to tell you about what I know, which is people, and how by working together, we can all kind of improve the way that we're doing outreach. A little background on the Hill Country. It's a 17-county region, according to our definition, which kind of varies. But it covers roughly 11 million acres that span from 2 population centers. You've got Austin in the north and San Antonio in the south. This area is the birthplace of 13 or 12 rivers, kind of depending on how you count them. And these major cities are facing extreme population growth. Folks across Texas are feeling the impacts of growth. Folks here, I think, are very acutely aware of what that's doing. But one thing that I like to tell folks is that when you're doing your messaging, place should always play a big role in your outreach. When we're in Austin, we're not going to be communicating in the same way we communicate in Kerrville. Folks have different experience, and by adapting our message to fit the place, we can go a lot further. Okay, so a little bit more background on HCA, the Hill Country Alliance. We were formed in 2004 by a group of landowners and, residents of Western Travis County who were concerned about the effects of development and growth. Now, 20 years down the road, we're still concerned about growth, but we're doing a lot of work across a much bigger region in a very collaborative manner. So we've got kind of 5 program areas in our work, and the water one definitely connects with groundwater conservation districts. I see a number of friends in the audience from GCDs within the Hill Country region, but all of our work really spans, providing resources, supporting local leaders, convening and bringing people together, and then amplifying the work of our partners across the region. What you might notice is that all of these things have to do with outreach. They all have to do with storytelling. And we wouldn't be making any kind of an impact if there weren't people involved in this conversation. So you might have come here because storytelling is a bit of a buzzword. I'm here to tell you that from my experience with storytelling, I like to think of it in the way that, school is to summer camp as outreach is to storytelling. School and summer camp, I think, are both necessary. They're both places where people go to learn. They both bring in their own audience. One maybe because they have to be there, one maybe because they want to be there. When we approach our outreach in a manner that is more storytelling focused, we're prioritizing connection. And storytelling, in itself centers on people. You can't have storytelling without a storyteller. It's all about bringing others in and getting them to be a part of it. And both Amy and Greg, who spoke before me, talked about those ambassadors and the importance of getting other people into the work that you're doing. I'm here to ask, how do you create new storytellers? You have to tell interesting stories, right? The first step to getting people involved in your work is to make them care about your work. So I'm curious, from the room, is anybody here communication staff in their organization? I see some communication staff. Is anybody here, is your organization not big enough to have communication staff? And maybe you wear that hat too. That's good to know, because not every organization has the bandwidth to support somebody whose full-time job is outreach or storytelling. But you can still take some lessons from this on how you could tell more interesting stories. So I've got 4 tips. There's more out there. You heard some more probably from Greg and Amy's talks. But my first step that I would love to encourage all of y'all to do is to listen. The first step is reading the room, knowing who your audience is, asking questions. I've asked y'all a couple questions today. I'd love to ask y'all more after this ends. But, people connect more to people than they do to a bunch of stats. You'll notice I haven't had as many stats up other than the, 17 counties, 11 million acres. I think that when we focus on getting to know our audience, we have a better chance to have them come back and trust us as a partner. You should always ask what makes people interested in what you're trying to say. The next piece of advice is to get visual whenever you can. It's great to create and use visuals whenever possible. This is, whether it's a before and after photo or a time lapse showing well drillings in your GCD's area, or flow rates for different springs in your area. All of these things are stuff that can be used to translate your information to a more general public. Note that some of that requires interpretation. If you put a drought stage, meter out there, you need to explain to people what it means. What's a curtailment? What's the difference between 30% and 60%? What does that translate to? If you're talking about before and after photos, it also really helps when you've got a drought. We've talked about drought being a time for action. Is anybody familiar with this famous swimming hole? Jacob's Well, yeah, this is Jacob's Well in Wimberley, except this is a bit older photo. This is a more recent one. Jacob's Well has gotten a lot of talk throughout other presentations today, but Jacob's Well is one of these great examples we have to talk about spring flow and the impact of pumping. This photo, kind of collage that shows 2 images together, I think if you ever have the opportunity to take a photo of a before and after in your community that shows drought, just know that people are going to react to it. These kinds of photos can bring in a lot of engagement. They also really give you an option to talk about, what's the future you have, what's the future you could have. I also wanted to include this example from Hayes Trinity GCD, so we're just kind of focusing on that little part of Hayes County for now. But Hayes Trinity has done a great job of getting some kind of old school style mailers out and putting out yard signs. This 30% drought condition sign that you see, these are posted around Hayes Trinity GCD's area. When you can get out into the community and put signs up, it actually is still effective. It's not like that stuff has stopped being useful since we have social media now. I think when you have charts that can show the progression of a challenge over time, that's a really good resource to use. And you should make these kinds of things accessible to people so then they can point them out and share them with your friends. Another kind of thing in the realm of getting visual, so at the Hill Country Alliance, we have some really great photos. We've got some great visual aids that we use in our presentations. Y'all have seen some of those beautiful shots. And if there's one takeaway that I can give y'all, I highly recommend doing photo contests. It's a great way to bring people in. You can interact with a whole lot of photographers. And the way we run them, we actually are able to use the photographs that are submitted to our annual photo contest, now 18 years in the running, to create really great resources. These are all donated images by photographers, both amateur and pro, and it's a great way of kind of building community. It helps us get photo resources, and I'm sure you, in whatever part of Texas you're in, whether it's the Panhandle or Laredo, you probably have some local photographers that you could build relationships with. We use those to build our calendar. Another really good partnership that I think is worth pointing out is find local artists. There's folks in every community that are creative. And a lot of our unique swag or creative maps that we've used have been done in partnership with local artists, whether it's a young woman in Wimberley who's getting ready to go to college, or our summer intern creating a new tote bag for us. These are really cool ways to kind of make something new that's visually appealing and brings new people in. I also want to take a second to plug the Texas Water Foundation. Y'all might have seen their booth out there, but they've got the Hill Country Runs on Water campaign, which is a part of their much broader Texas Runs on Water campaign. If y'all have the chance to work with them, it's a really great resource for GCDs. There's a new toolkit that they're promoting, and I highly recommend you go out and sign up for it. This is a great resource to help y'all get some new graphics that kind of standardize how we talk about water and the fact that everything we do is running on water. So getting the chance to work with groups like Texas Runs on Water and put out local art in a community like Junction, that's where this mural picture is taken, has been a really cool way for us to get involved in the community in a really visual way. Next step, keep it simple, generally. Some things cannot be explained without getting a little in the weeds. I would encourage you to avoid jargon and acronyms when you can. You'll notice that in this presentation, I do still use the acronym GCD, but I figure y'all know what that is. In general, when you're doing outreach, it's great to avoid the stuff that's going to turn people off right off the bat. And it's really good to embrace repetition. Y'all might have seen Vanessa Puig-Williams here earlier today, and Vanessa has this great little soundbite that aquifers are infrastructure. And that is a really great example of a phrase that we should all be repeating, right? When we have something that's catchy and short, I shouldn't be afraid to say it more than once. Also, if you can include cause and effect examples in your presentations, whether it's tying the amount of spring flow instead of talking just in CFS and how many cubic feet per second are flowing to how long does it take to float a river on an inner tube at that rate, it can connect more with the general public. I would also encourage you to ask yourself, whenever you're starting a presentation or planning a presentation, if somebody totally new to your audience would understand what you're talking about, and if there's a way for you to shorten what you're talking about, so that instead of going on and on about natural infrastructure, you could just say aquifers are infrastructure. Keep it short, keep it simple. I'd also, step 4, encourage you to switch it up. There's tons of different inspiring examples across the region. I'm familiar with the ones here in the Hill Country, but a couple that I wanted to point to have to do with ways you connect with different media. So We have a long-running partnership with Texas Public Radio called the Texas Water Symposium. This is a series that gets put on the air in San Antonio area, and it's a great way for us to reach new audiences and bring, whether it's somebody from the Edwards Aquifer Authority or somebody from the Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance, we bring these experts together and have them talk. And we reach a totally new audience. So radio is still an option. Podcasts are a great option. Dr. Mace is here from the Meadows Center, and I've got the Hotter Than a Habanero podcast on this list because I think that's a creative way that one research institute is tackling tough topics that maybe you could put into a long-form essay, or you could put it into a podcast and see if that's a cool way for folks to tune in and listen. Although you should not forget that local print media is also a great source. A lot of our partners exist in small rural communities where local print media is still the main way folks access their information. So I'd highly recommend that, if you've got small towns in your jurisdiction, maybe find a way to get a recurring column or even to get your spring flow data published in there. I also want to give y'all one note here on videos, which is that I like to compartmentalize videos into two ways. So there's the big deal videos that require a team and a lot of effort, and that might be what you think of when you think of creating video content for outreach purposes. I'm here to tell you that they don't all have to be big budget or hard to make or, daunting things to tackle. A video can be simple and friendly, and it could be as simple as having your groundwater district manager explain what CFS are, how does spring flow impact pumping, or vice versa. When you can take people and make them human to a broad audience, you're making a success in your storytelling right there. Okay, continuing on the switching it up, it's really great to create targeted learning spaces. If the only time your community hears from your district is when there is a problem, then you're not getting out there enough. I'm pointing to Hayes Trinity GCD because that's a group that I'm familiar with as a person that lives in Wimberley. We've got a really water-aware community in that part of Hayes County. And part of that is because the GCD goes out and participates in things, whether it's their WaterWise speaker series or popping on the radio to talk about water music and the drought forecast. If you can get involved, go to a council meeting and talk about the state of water in your community, have something like that be a recurring series, you're gonna build community support just by being present. I'm also gonna point out a program that the Hill Country Alliance has been involved in because I think that the work that we're doing here is something that could be replicated in other parts of the state. Last year, we launched the Hill Country Leadership Institute, and this is a really great program, in my opinion, that brings together leaders from the county level, the city level, and from the groundwater districts in our region. And when we bring these folks together, we aren't there to take center stage and tell everybody what we know. We bring in experts from multiple fields, we create networking and learning opportunities, and these create conversations. And so often, we don't have conversations at different levels of government, of different levels of leadership on water. And I think that the future of our water planning is gonna come from having people together in the same room, feeling comfortable enough to talk about things. Okay, so now hopefully you know how to tell interesting stories. How do you get new storytellers, new ambassadors to tell your stories? I think it's the friends you make along the way. Does anybody here know somebody that shows up to your board meetings, maybe shows up at public meetings, and maybe is a thorn in your side? You don't have to raise your hand. Think about that person. Think about somebody that is present. Keep that in mind. When you can find your friends and create opportunities to learn together, you are creating new storytellers. These friend groups should not all have the same perspectives. They should not all agree on what the best use for your water is. Maybe there's certain areas where we can all agree, but in general, you should have complementary skill sets that challenge each other. You should have folks that pose one perspective and then others that pose a totally different one. I think that is what leads to the best compromises. It's also what leads to us getting things done. And I want to point out that sometimes your friends don't start as your friends. So think of that person that might be a thorn in your side or just a challenge. And I've got a story to tell you. So does anybody here know the guy right in the middle? I see some hands go up. I see some Hill Country hands go up. So for those of you that maybe don't know, this fellow in the middle is named Milan Michalek, And he is a long-term partner with the Hill Country Alliance. This is actually a photo from last year. Our organization recognized him with an award for his long-term dedication to hill country conservation. But he didn't start that way. Back in 2004, Milan got involved in the Kendall County Groundwater District. It's actually Cow Creek Groundwater Conservation District, which covers Kendall County, as kind of an antagonist. He and a group of roughly 100 concerned citizens were not happy about meters. They were mad about meters. They started showing up to board meetings, and he was kind of leading that opposition. From 2004 to 2006, he continued going to those board meetings. He got really involved, and he learned a lot. And Milan will be the first to tell you that when he learns, he can change his mind. He really got involved in water. He got to the point that he realized GCDs were not the problem. And in 2006, he actually took up a vacant position on the Cow Creek Groundwater Conservation District. And he has served on that district as board member and board president ever since. He spent 10 years as the Cow Creek Groundwater Conservation District, actually just stepping aside earlier this summer so that it could go on to new leadership. But Milan, I think, is a great example of how somebody who maybe could have been very easily dismissed or pushed away or really turned off to the message was instead brought in and encouraged to have conversation and nudged gently in the right direction. And now he's a tremendous resource for our region. Milan has, in his time at Cow Creek GCD, he's put out rainwater harvesting resources. He's taught a lot of people a lot of things about water. And that's not even his day job. This is his side passion. So many of y'all have seen that quote, the tell me and I will forget, show me and I may remember, involve me and I will understand. It's contributed to both Confucius and Ben Franklin, and quite honestly, I don't know who said it first. But what I would like to add is that when I understand, I'll tell all my friends. Folks like this, who start off maybe not on the same page as you, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the relationship. It doesn't mean it's the end of your potential to work together. It actually creates a great opportunity to create new storytellers. And on that note, I'll just say that when you learn together, you can create your best champions and make really great stories along the way. And now I've got some time for questions. I think I've timed it so we've got roughly 10 minutes for questions. So let's see, any questions? Or stories? Maybe about the person that is the thorn in your side that now you're inspired to work with.
Don't be afraid to come up to the mics. She won't bite. There's one right there.
Hey, Leah, I'm curious, and I should know this and I don't, but what stories have gotten the most attention that you've posted on social or email?
Yeah, so a lot of my work does focus on online outreach. I kind of intentionally stayed away from that because I think people get really tired of talking about social media. But I will say drought photos, before and afters, people really like a problem. That brings in the most attention. I also think a really good infographic can go a long way. And if you can take 5 minutes to make something that's a video explaining what it's about, that is sure to get the most engagement. At least out of what we share for Hill Country Alliance. And our topics cover a lot of things, from night skies to water management. But I would say if in your community there's something that's contentious that people have questions about, whether it's like drought stages or watering regulations, take 5 minutes, film some video, even if you maybe don't feel like you're the most fancy or formal or professional. I think that kind of candid look is what people relate to the most. So that's what we see the most attention from.
Thank you.
I'm with Clearwater in Bell County. What we have found really works is we have an annual water symposium, and we have up to like 300 people. This lady right here runs it, basically. And it's a lot of work to put it on. We bring people from all over for education, and not only has it made the public aware of what we do, we get a very good relationship from everybody that, hey, these guys aren't against you.
Yeah.
They're with you. So, if you can take your area and do some kind of a water symposium, I think you'll find that it'll really be helpful to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think having the chance to bring people together for positives rather than just negatives is it's going to be crucial to us working together, because if we're only seeing each other when there's a problem, like we're missing out on most of life, right? So creating those avenues, whether it's you as a GCD or a local partner that you can get involved with to kind of meet the community where they are, that's going to be a really great way to build, positive action and goodwill. Yes, sir.
This is a story about knowing your audience, and it involves two questions. And the first question I'll just ask this audience, and it's about taking things that don't belong to you. So is there anyone in this room that has never taken something from another that didn't belong to you? The second question is about telling the truth. Is there anyone in this audience that has never said anything that wasn't the truth? Then I can only surmise that there's a bunch of liars and thieves in this room.
Thank you. I think that may have been all the questions. Are there any others? Anybody? Oh, awesome.
I'm curious, so there's social media and email and video podcasts. Are there any new platforms that you're seeing with the younger generations that we might not know about yet? i.e., what is Threads?
Threads. Well, I think Threads is a spin-off from Meta to kind of take the place that Twitter has left in its conversion to X. If that confused you, don't worry about it. We're not on Threads either, for the record. I think that people undervalue the importance of in-person interactions. I think our younger generation is really hungry for chances to see each other in person. I think video is a really great tool, and I think that we should all be in some way making something that's a video-friendly resource for people if you want to be seen by younger folks. But I also think that there's ways to meet people where they are, and a lot of those happen in person. So don't forget the importance of actually going out and getting in the community. Sweet. Looks like one more.
Sure, if you have time. I think it's the age-old question, and that is, how do you get people to show up to your events? Is it food? Is it, food. That's the key that we go for. But is there some other way? Because I've totally been where Greg was talking about. You throw the party, and you're the only one that shows up. Any tips, tricks? How do you get 350 people to your symposium? That's awesome. So is it lunch? Any other ideas? I'm open for sure.
Food's a big one. And I'd encourage anybody that also has suggestions to pop up and say them afterwards. But I'll say food is a great way to get people in the room. Also, planning your meetings at times when folks are free. Think about it. Not everybody's free at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. Folks with kids are probably not free at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday, or 5, or 2 in the afternoon. A lot of folks are working during that time. So think about the timing of your events. Find ways that you can host meetings or events at different times so you can reach people that are free at different times. And think about where you're advertising it. Is it in a paper? Is it on the news? Are you doing a targeted ad campaign on social media? All of those are going to have really different pools that you're pulling in. So that would be my little tip. Also, look at your staff. Look at the age of your staff. Look at the age of your most involved participants in your programming. And if they're all the same age, maybe look at switching it up, because it's really hard to reach an audience that doesn't see themselves in your work. So that's another food for thought.
Questions? There we go, right here.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think y'all heard her, but if you didn't hear Shay, it's really great to find your local partners. And if they're reaching an audience that you don't currently reach, you don't need to make a whole new effort to reach that audience. Just partner with the folks that do and find a way that you can make their audience also yours. Okay, Thanks, y'all. This was a good Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Leah. Thank you very much.